Welcome to the latest addition to the Compliance Podcast Network, report from Impact 2023. ECI's Impact 2023 was one of the leading compliance events in the year of 2023. At this conference, Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, was able to visit with several of the speakers, exhibitors, participants, and one group from an ethically minded Girl Scout troop in New Jersey. In this limited podcast series, Tom explores many of the most cutting-edge topics in ethics and compliance through short podcast episodes. Check out the full series of interviews. You will be enlightened, informed, and come away with a fuller and more thorough understanding of the most cutting-edge topics in ethics and compliance. Check out this episode of Report from Impact 2023. In this episode, we have Ronnie Feldman, president and founder of Learnings and Entertainments. Ronnie talks about the evolution of compliance training and the evolution he's seen in compliance conferences. We talk about how you can best put on compliance communications and trainings for an international audience. Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox, back with another episode from ECI, Impact 2023. Today I have with me Ronnie Feldman. Ronnie, welcome.
Hey, good to be here.
Ronnie, what's your current role?
I am the founder and president of Learnings and Entertainments, L&E Creative. We are a network of comedians who make important corporate risk topics more engaging and memorable, and isn't that weird?
What's weird about it is the last time we were together was when I pitched to you the idea of us doing a podcast.
It's true. We were at ECI 2019, and you're like, hey, Ronnie, let's do a podcast about you. And it was stroked my ego just enough that I'm like, fantastic.
Ronnie, I wanted to maybe use that as a way to introduce a question of what do you see different now 3 or 4 years later and from your perspective, the ECI conference?
Let me start by saying the thing that I find the same, which is really lovely, and the reason I like to come to these events to begin with, is that I learned so much from the informal conversations that you have in person, peer-to-peer, with the professionals in the industry. You get to hear what their problems are. It's the little chats. They have some great sessions and things like that, but I tend to get the most value out of these little networking moments where you, even if it's over a cocktail, where they let their guard down and they share what's important to them, or I can introduce an idea, or we can riff on a problem that they're having, and it helps where we get off in these little breakthroughs of creative solutions on how to engage employees by just listening and reacting to their problems, and that's hard to do over Zoom. So I really been enjoying that the informal conversations that you have with people. Different? Was that the original question?
Right.
The things that are different, there's a lot of interesting subject matters. We have to learn about how to communicate and engage and train people in a variety of new ways because people have a remote workforce. How do you reach these people in a way that's impactful to them? My perspective on this, I hate e-learning. I find it to be mostly ineffective, long, and boring. And particularly when people are working remotely, they're just clicking and not paying attention to multitasking. I found that there's a lot of creative solutions, including our own, which help to ping people more frequently through like little commercials, little short social media style stuff, just different ways to reach people at home or on other online media that doesn't require the big LMS push. I found like that's been an interesting thing that people are talking about. Another thing that came to mind is, Tom, you only have to ask one question. The interesting thing that came to mind is like the idea of, they're talking a lot about ESG and corporate social responsibility and how the workforce is really, regardless of what you call it, looking for your company to be more socially aware. And that pushes us more away from a compliance model, i.e. you must do this, into a more values-based model, which is we all are trying in this together, trying to do the right thing. And that informs the things that we create because we want to create content that is both interesting and positive and culture-based, and we're all in this together based, and to find a way to do that in a way that's not boring and preachy. So it's nice to see that the world is coming our way, meaning away from finger-wagging compliance and more towards, hey, we're all in this together, let's speak up and hold each other accountable, and let's look for creative ways to do that. So I love that trend is happening, and it fits into the world that we're trying to influence as well.
Let me pitch to you a question I heard pitched to you last night at the cocktail party,
Okay.
which is training for an international company.
Uh-huh.
Does it translate from a U.S.-based English language comedy idea to something in a different language? And how do you help a client think through that issue?
I like the way you phrase that, because it's truly about helping the client think through that issue. There are a number of creative solutions to engage a global, multicultural workforce, diverse workforce. So the more narrowly that you can define your audience, the more effective we can be. If you're like, hey, let's engage Belgium senior leaders, like, I can create content for that. It gets more difficult when you're trying to say, let's engage 30,000 people around the globe. Having said that, there's some tendencies, like animation tends to be a better format to show more representation, or to take things out of reality in a little bit, is one way to do that. I tend to use less jokes and wordplay, because remember, I call the company Learnings and Entertainments, because entertainment is broader than just comedy. I find that using music is a really interesting technique to engage a global workforce. Music tends to translate better, it's more thematic. So I tend to use a lot of music, less jokes and wordplay. I do a lot of custom videos for global clients where we'll involve real people. That's another way to do it, because what do they have in common is them in their language, so let's involve them in their languages. So we'll create like Zoom-style talk shows where we'll interview real leaders. We might ask the question in a fun way. Yeah, those are the kinds of things. There's no one single solution. It's the more tightly we can get around the audience, the easier it is to create around it. I'll say one more thing about it. The other thing is, if you can't do that and you have a limited budget, then the answer is to try lots and lots of little things, to be less precious about it, to not try and find the one thing, because it doesn't exist. So my recommendation is, push out a video of this style for a couple of weeks, and then try a different video of this style a couple of weeks, and then try a video of this style for a couple of weeks, knowing full well that over time you're going to engage more people. You're just going to have some misses along the way. I feel like that's like the most efficient way to accomplish what you're doing. And then you don't have to worry so much about the one thing. You're like, oh gosh, that didn't work in Belgium.
You don't have to worry about misses along the way. That may be my epitaph.
Oh, misses along the way?
I don't have to worry about it.
Yes, is that M-I-S-E-S or M-R-S?
M-R-S or else. Well, Ronnie, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to visit with me today.
Yeah, hey, we'll hope to see you all live in person out there sometime soon.
This is Tom Fox. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Report from Impact 2023. We've linked to the guest information in the show notes, as well as ECI. Check out the ECI website for upcoming events, reports, and other information. Report from ECI 2023 is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.